All right, let's get started. I am coming into this one deep in thought today, so I'm actually going to use the smoke to get myself started. Usually when I sit down, I'm sort of rocking, but I've been sitting at this desk for a little bit longer than usual before I get rolling with you guys. So I actually think I need a moment here to sort of unwind and ungather myself, just to get myself clear-headed to think. So if you can see, for those who are listening and watching in today's show, you can see that I have an accumulation of journals on this desk. I don't know, I didn't count exactly how many there are. I move a lot. If you think of the last episode that I talked about on the sleep episode of my nomadic lifestyle that I've had for a significant amount of years, really dating back to even when I was in middle school, I started moving with my family. And we moved from Michigan, Farmington, Michigan. We went to Columbus, Ohio, Pickerington exactly. And then we went back from Pickerington to Farmington my sophomore year. And we were there until I went to Central Michigan. I went to Mount Pleasant, Michigan. And I was in Mount Pleasant for a few years. And every summer, one of the things that they do in baseball specifically is in the summers on most summer teams is they send you out to play summer baseball. And these summer teams are for people from Central Michigan, or when I went to Minnesota State, these Midwest schools. Maybe you're not a Power 5 or a Power 10, I'm not sure. Maybe you're not a big conference. You don't play for a major conference sports team. And so in those scenarios, you want to play summer ball because it improves your likelihood of getting drafted. Now, I have heard that it's slightly different nowadays than it was when I played, but when I was playing, that was how you got signed, or got noticed at least, is that you'd go play summer ball. So why I'm sharing that is because I would travel and play around the country when I was in college, and I went to Eau Claire, Wisconsin 3 years in a row. So I would play my season I'd go to school in Mount Pleasant, Michigan, and then I'd move to Eau Claire. I'd live with a family. I'd live there for the summer, and then I'd move back to Mount Pleasant. And then when I transferred, I went to Minnesota State, and I moved to Mankato, Minnesota, and I still played for that Eau Claire team. So then I was playing school ball and living in Minnesota, and then I was moving and playing one more year in Wisconsin. And then I signed to play professionally in 2013, and with the Brewers, and the first place I went to was Helena, Montana. So then I moved to Montana. And then fortunately I got to get to familiarity. I'll just go with it. But I got sent up, and I was sent to Appleton. So I was back in Wisconsin, where I played for 3 more years in that organization. And then I bounced around. I spent some off seasons in Florida. I spent some winters back in the college days in Arizona. I lived in Kansas for a minute there. And then that was that. I moved back to Minnesota for a bit, and then I ended up going out to California for the last couple of years, and I've lived back down in the desert because I'm familiar with Arizona, and it's a good place. And then Minnesota I'm also familiar with. So where I'm kind of taking this story and location and shape and form has brought me into, I've tried to bring these books with me, these journals with me that you can see throughout my travels. I started getting my first, and like I said, for those who are just listening, I apologize. It's easier when you can see this, but I got my first journals and writings in these papers that I've traveled with, and these were actually from 2000. That one's from 2008. So this would have been 2007. My first ever note page that I wrote to myself should be in here somewhere. And it was in 2005, if I can find it. It was just one note paper. Yeah, here it is. So yeah, 2007. So this might have been 2000. Yeah, this was 2006. So this is the first time I ever wrote anything down, and now I just dropped it, but I'll use my toe to grab it. 2006. I wrote in this notepad, or this little piece of paper, and it was what I wanted to accomplish that year. I wanted to be ranked the top 40 players in Oakland County, which was the county I grew up in. I wanted to be the top player for the Farmington Falcons baseball team, and I wanted to be the top junior in the state of Minnesota. My goals were to be the best player on the team, be the best player in the county, and become recognized by colleges. And I just wrote at the bottom, work hard every day. So I used that, and at the end of that year, I ended up accomplishing almost all of those things for my senior year. And I acquired a lot of this success. I garnered a lot of exposure from professional teams. I obviously had a Division I scholarship. I just told you that story. I moved away and went to Mount Pleasant. And that was sort of the birth of my competitive baseball career. The one that after that was 2007 and then 2008 and 2009. And I have a collection of goals and notes, but really what it turned into around 2009 to 2010 were all these journals. And I started journaling, and journals became more of a daily entry. So I started with just these like monthly goals or writing down things in notebooks and keeping them with me. And they've just sort of followed me my whole life. And that's what the point of today's discussion is that talking about the artistic process of taking something from nothing. Making something from nothing. So considering how do we channel energy? How do we channel expression? How do we create our art, if you will? It's my personal belief that everybody's an artist. I genuinely believe that. I think everybody is an artist, and materially we perceive art solely through things like painting or making music or writing, if you will. But I think art is being mechanical, obviously a chef can be in that scenario. Athletes are artists. I think entrepreneurs are artists. Obviously people who work in AI are artists, and people who work on computers or do things I'm thinking of like the Canva app, and people who make content for organizations or themselves or their own business. Everyone's sort of an artist. And when I talk to people, I always ask them, and I'm going to consider this, I'm making this up on the fly for this conversation. I'm going to sort of work through my thoughts with you guys, but my intentions are that it allows you to think purely on how you make your own art and how you create something from nothing. And I think largely when we collect data, for me, it's these journals, we become confident in how we create something from nothing. And in terms of philosophical aspects of this is one of the principles of metaphysics. A metaphysical thing is that exact concept. It's making something from nothing. And what is the nothing? Where do we get nothingness from? I think I'll talk about that. I'm sure I'm going to talk about that as we're into this show today. But what I find something that comes from nothing is sparked from childhood. And if you listen to me frequently, you've probably heard me talk recently a lot about the genius of the child, because the genius of children is that they live in imagination. They form and shape material and space and matter around them based off of creativity, because they're not fixed to conformity just yet. They haven't been educated. They haven't been put into the curriculum of society. And that can be put into however you want that to be good or bad. That's not necessarily the point here. It's that once you become influenced, there's a duality to influence, and the opposite of influence could be manipulated. You're essentially going to be influenced and or manipulated as you begin the educational process in society. And that process is going to be passed down through curriculums, largely from conforming influences or superiority. People who are in authoritative positions our natural behavior as a human is to conform, because it's easy to rinse and repeat. It's easy to not have to create something new out of nothing or create something out of nothing. It's easy to take material and things that are real and tangibilize them and just sort of run it back, right? You can just kind of run it back. And that's a lot of how we're educated. That's a lot of how we're taught. We're just taught hand-me-down traditions, hand-me-down morals, hand-me-down concepts. Again, this doesn't need to be framed in good or bad. It's just recognizing the natural inkling that we have to conform as people. A natural result of conformity to the child's mind is, as the child's mind starts to develop, imagination and creativity starts to decrease. So you start to lose your ability to imagine things or to create things. You start to only work with material. You no longer feel confidence or the courage or the discipline, whatever, to sort of peel into your imaginative states and understand the uncertainty of nothingness, to play in the uncertainty of nothingness, and to intuitively move yourself into creating art. And I think that's why artists as adults are so misunderstood, and they feel misunderstood, because it's easier to be understood when you are a conformist or working with the majority as compared to a nonconformist working singularly or in small groups. It's just the way it works for whatever reason. I mean, think of things that are in pop culture or things that we accept as norm. It's really easy to essentially play those roles and perform those characters because it's rinse and repeatable. It's hard to intuitively bring your own unique voice, your authentic perspective, or your imagination, and make that real for the world, especially in the beginning when you try to go from intangible to tangible, because your vision can't be seen by the outside world. It's essentially a relationship between you and God. And God understands it, your intuition understands it, your essence understands the vision. But it's these minor movements, these minor choices that take something from the abyss and it makes it real. And that takes time. I call it the time delay. And the time delay is very stressful. So you need time to learn yourself. And the best time through maturity, or the process of maturity and understanding your art, understanding your unique blueprint or imprint on humanity, on the cosmos, if you will, is, oddly enough, it's maintaining the childlike tendencies. It's aligning with the child that you were in the brain that you had that still lives inside of you. And can you somehow coexist the imaginative childlike brain or the childlike tendencies to explore and be open-minded and live like that while being an adult in a world that you now have awareness to? You now understand the need for money, financial security, fitness, health, family, friends, faith. You understand hierarchies, governmental positions. You understand political movements. You understand religious backgrounds. You understand how education works. You realize what a 401k is and health insurance. And you have a past that you're largely probably shameful of or feeling guilty of. You have the anxieties of the future. You're constantly anticipating, trying to avoid uncertainty. And so I think that that's the process needed to fully find our own voice in whatever endeavors we go down. And like I said, art is in everything. If you're a coach, you're an artist. Teacher, you're an artist. If you're a mother, you're an artist. The way in which you bring your ideas to humanity is your art. And whatever discipline that you're in is how connected you are to that, I guess, perspective. And I think that the hardest part to do that is because even in our jobs, like I said, conformity rules out. So it's easy to get a curriculum and get certified in something or be trained in something and then repeat what you were trained in doing, or just repeating what the person before you said or did. And I think that largely has so much to do with our natural instinct to create an assembly line style life for our workforce. But even as I'm saying that, it just hurts me to say that, because I just don't find that to be the path. To me, I feel like the path of anything that we do is to work in structure, to play together, to cooperate together, to survive together, to perform roles that may seem mundane, but it's doing it as ourselves. And that, in my definition of art, is art. So how do we maintain the childlike tendencies? The things that I have, again, I know if you can't see this, but things that I have with me, that I've had with me my entire life, are 3 books. Okay? These are 3 books that I have. And I wrote them as a kid. So the year right now is 2025. This first book is written October 19th, 1994. Meet the author. Harvey Martin is 5 years old and is in Miss Sally's morning kindergarten class. He enjoys playing baseball and soccer. Now, this is the first book I ever wrote. It's something, When I Grow Up, by Harvey Martin, is the title of this book. When I grow up, I want to be a baseball player. I will be a good player because I can run really fast, which is not accurate. I was extremely slow and still slow. I will bat and play outfield for the Detroit Tigers. I will have a baseball card with my picture. Somewhat accurate because I did play professional baseball and I had a baseball card with my picture on it. Still do. If you guys want to buy it, it's probably like 5 cents on eBay or wherever they sell Topps baseball cards. I didn't play with the Detroit Tigers, but I did think I was going to go in the draft to the Tigers. I ended up not doing that. Sometimes my team will win the game. I will be happy if we win. If my team loses the game, I will be a good sport and not get mad. I want to be a baseball player just like my dad. He wins lots of trophies by playing baseball. He did have tons of trophies from his whole life, probably still does. To be a good player, you have to be a good batter. I also need to count well so I can keep score. The end. That was the first book I wrote when I was 5 years old. This next book, I'm not going to read these books to you, but this next book I wrote March 12th, 1996, Meet the Author. Harvey Martin is a 6-year-old and is in Mrs. Barch's first grade class. He enjoys sports, especially baseball and football, so no longer soccer. I'm transitioning to football. This is his second book. It was called My Vacation. This next book I wrote was published in 1998. It's starting to get a lot heavier. Harvey, Gill School Published Company. I was published by Gill Elementary School. The author, Harvey Martin, which my handwriting still looks wildly the same from this year. I don't know where 97 went, but we're to 98. Now, the odd part about this one is now I have table of contents. So you can see the evolution of my book. I had 10 chapters in this book, and this was the last book that I've carried. Now today, as an adult, I have 2 published books, which I brought with me. Here's Without Words, which was published in 2024, and here's Breathe, Focus, Excel. That was published in 2023. Technically, professionally speaking, I've made money, commerce off both these books, so I've become a professional author in this regards. So in 2023, I would have been, 34. And then last year I was 35, 33 to 35. I'm not doing math. I'm not a mathematician guy. But we're close, right? And those are my 2 published books. So why do I share all that? Well, if the first one that I wrote was 1994 and it's now 2025. Whew, man, that's a long time. 31 years. It's 31 years that I've been writing books. And the reason why I'm sharing all this is because when I think about the thing that resonates with me the most in a story that I'll share briefly, and then we can kind of tie this up. When I was in 3rd grade, I was in a singular class with a learning disability. And I don't know how accurate all these stories are. This is just how I interpret it as an adult. When I was in 3rd grade, I would go to these classes one-on-one. And it was to read and learn how to read and write. I was deemed as having a disability in reading. And long story short, I was somewhat misdiagnosed. And in 4th grade, so after these books are written, these childhood books are written, in 4th grade, which is probably 98 maybe, I can't remember, I started teaching the class in my fourth grade class. And one of the things that came about in this was that in third grade, second and third grade, mostly third grade, I would have a psychiatrist who would work with me outside of these classes. So they were training me under the image that I had a learning disability in reading, while simultaneously I had a psych working with me on my mind to discover if that was actually the root, if I had a learning disability or if I was somewhat introverted or too shy to communicate in class, because that's largely what was happening. I wasn't speaking in the class. And so that was deemed as I wasn't capable of reading at a third grade level, and I needed to elevate my ability, my intellect, to be able to do that. So this lady, when I was in third grade, I can't remember her name. I can barely remember what she looked like, but to me, she was an older lady, shorter hair. She was super sweet, had such a calming voice, very kind-spirited person. And one of the things that I remember is that in the class that I was with her, it was like windows, there was trees and plants, and it was always calming to sit in there with her. In this other class, it was dark, and I didn't like the guy that I was working with, so I didn't even respond to him. And I felt weird. I felt like I was being talked down to. I don't remember these moments, obviously, but I remember the feelings, and I remember the differences in both feelings. One feeling made me happy. The other one made me slightly frustrated. And the one that I was frustrated, I would never communicate in. I would stay silent. And the one that I was happy in, I would be curious and open-minded, and I would expand and explore my ideas. So in this one, which will highlight the one that I was happy, curious, open-minded in, the psychiatrist would put a picture in front of me, and it didn't have words. It didn't have letters or anything. It would just be a picture. And she would ask me to tell her a story. And when she put the picture in front of me, I would start, and I would just start talking. One specific picture that I remember her showing me was a boy fishing on a pond in the middle of a woods. I don't know why, I just distinctly remember that video, that picture, sorry. And remembering that picture, I don't remember what story I told, but I remember her giving me a treat and hugging me and telling me how lovely that made her feel, that I evoked some emotion in her. I can't remember this. This feels like it's coming up to me, but this is part of the storytelling part. I can't remember if she got emotional. So if I could share a story of this boy who has a learning disability, and he's down and out, he's introverted, he's shy, he's to blame in many ways, and so he's pushed off to essentially figure things out. And he's in this dark room with a guy who doesn't really listen to him and doesn't really care about him. And so he shuts down even more, and everything turns into resentment and anger. So he closes off his mind. He no longer gives the world his imagination. On the flip side, the paradox to this is the exact opposite. Here's a lady who gives this boy treats and love and hugs and listens and gives her her presence. And she loves his stories. She's engaged by his stories, and he can feel the presence. He can feel that he's understood. He can feel that he's being heard and seen. If you can relate this to parts of your own life, if you can see what I'm doing here as I'm creating a story right now in real time. So the boy starts to tell these elaborate stories to the lady, and the relationship no longer becomes student and psych. It becomes essentially friend to friend. And they're on this journey together. And it's a younger boy and an older, kind lady who's listening and kind of journeying it with this young chap, we'll call him. And so after these stories, he's showing the imagination and gifting her everything he has. He's detailing it. He's impactful. He's engaging. And after this one story that he talks about a boy who's fishing in a pond in the middle of a woods, and finding the peace in nature and the love and the connection of being able to fish and be in those moments, this lady begins to cry because she starts to feel empathy and compassion for the little boy, because she realizes that the boy telling the story is the boy in the picture of the story. Essentially, I shared my feelings in connection to myself as that little boy fishing that she put a picture in front of me. And I was so easily able to connect with that boy in the picture and tell her about what that boy is doing and the human side of that boy and the feelings that that boy in the picture had and the love and excitement and curiosity that that boy carried. And it evoked an emotion from the older lady. And so her tears she couldn't help herself. She had to grab a hold of me and hug me and give me love. And so that commitment of love between the two of us, it opened me up. She essentially passes me and puts me back into fourth grade, takes me out of the learning disability class and says that I no longer need that. I was intelligent enough to be outside of that. I knew how to read, I knew how to write, but she wanted me to tell stories in my fourth grade class because she saw my imagination take off in storytelling. And so she wanted me to exercise my gifts, and she felt like that would make me more confident as a person. And it would allow me to leave my introversion, become extroverted to a way, and engage students and be seen and understood. And it would create a level of acceptance. As she accepted me, I would now be accepted by my classmates. And she's genius for it, because in fourth grade, I found maybe the calling of my life, because I began speaking, and I shared this in previous shows, I began speaking on history and wars and battles and things that I was engaged with. I used to play Little Army Men all the time when I was a little boy. And so I would create these sides and these divisions, and I would always have a victor, and I would talk about the strategy that the victor had and how the opposing, war, battlefield, whatever, how they lost essentially. And I would read books and things that I wanted to read and things that I wanted to discover. And I would connect all these dots. I'd have characters, I'd have main characters, secondary characters, a plot, obviously a conclusion, a beginning and an end. And I would stand up in class in fourth grade and I would share these stories. And so when I think of my life now, 30 years later, the thing that I enjoy doing as an artistic expression over anything is talking into a microphone. I enjoy trying to press play and not knowing where this is going. I don't know where this was going. I didn't plan on anything I just said. I put all these journals in front of me because I walked by them in the garage the other day, and I figured I'm reading a book right now that's the work of art, and I figured let's take a swing at this and let's see what happens. But the reason why I feel comfortable doing this is because I enjoy it. I enjoy telling stories, and I enjoy trying to take something from nothing and materializing it into something. And that's the reason why I enjoy writing books. That's the reason why I like journaling. Now, the reason why I have all these journals and these books from when I was a kid, and I show that, and then I only have 2 books that have been sold and generate money, is because that to me is the importance of art. The importance of art is that you never do it for commerce or for other people. You don't tell your stories for other people. You share them with the world when you feel they're ready. You write books or you do your art and you share it with the world when you feel you're ready to share and showcase. But in the meantime, you are constantly just making art to make art. And I think over time you learn that the process of taking something from nothing metaphysically and putting it into something becomes the high of human consciousness. It becomes the peeling, or the mirror, we'll say, the mirror to your state of becoming. It's becoming more of who you are. And therefore, we have to make art. Art becomes a necessity for survival. And I think largely when we lose that connection to artistic expression, creative expression, if you will, we start to essentially die while being alive. We start to sleepwalk through life because we allow life to beat us, and it fixates our thinking, and it puts us into conformity. And art, like I said, is not necessarily generating even things. I mean, I show these 20 plus notebooks that have made $0 and the world's never even seen them or read them. And then it's made itself into only 2 publications that the world has seen, right? So if you just do the math on how much I'm producing that the world isn't seeing versus what the world is seeing, it's not even close. I'm producing a significant amount of art that generates me $0 and doesn't even get exposed. But that's not the point. The point is to continuously pull material out of who you are. And this will be my final acknowledgement of this concept as we kind of shut down after this. One of the things that I've come to learn is that materially we play a character in reality from birth to death. The character that we play is our vehicle, the vehicle being our mind and our body. The framework of the mind and the body is very objective. So therefore we know the mechanics of human psychology. We understand that the mechanics of thinking is based in negativity, right? And it's survival. It's survival mechanisms. You are psychologically prone to avoid things like uncertainty. You are psychologically prone to avoid changes and struggle. And because of that, our psychology, our cortexual thinking, our prefrontal lobe, if you will, the way in which we problem solve and rationalize, is trying to solve that regularly. Hence why we love comfort and convenience naturally. And as the civilizations have continued to progress, that has been one of the main progressive states, is our ability to make things more comfortable and convenient. So that's part of the framework of thinking. Also in our thinking, we have subconscious and conscious. Most of our brain is made up of subconscious matter, which means that we're a habitual creature. We are patterns. Essentially, we're just repeating things over and over and over again. We're stuck in memory because of the subconscious. So we're constantly bringing the past with us regularly. If you want to have a great experience to this, just tomorrow morning when you wake up, there's a very small window in which you are potentially free from past thinking. And then once you become wildly conscious and aware, you are regularly pulling the decisions that you made the day before, or the things that you did the week before, or what people said to you the day before or a week before, et cetera, et cetera. And you're trying to map that into making the accurate futuristic decision. And this is either macro or micro. This could be the movement of, this could be subconsciously that you know that the day before you brush your teeth right away when you woke up, or you had water, will go healthy. Both of those are healthy, but you subconsciously drink water first thing when you do in the morning. And that gets hardwired in the subconscious. So then when you become somewhat conscious, you are predicting having water in the morning. That's why we become these unconscious species, because we essentially get on our hamster wheel and we just repeat our day over and over and over again, which is what makes life so naturally mundane. That's the framework of how we think. And then you have a framework of your body. You have a framework in mechanics of anatomy and physiology, which I talk about often, right? The way that our skeleton structure is set up, the way that our extremities, our hands and our feet and our skull and our rib cage and our pelvic, everything has a framework to it, and it puts us in a way in which we can move in space. Our physiology is kind of that internal functioning. It's kind of that middle ground from anatomy to psychology. And that's our things like respiration, that's heart rate, that's our organ functioning, our blood flow, whatever. Mostly all of that is unconscious, and it's automatically happening. And so we know that these things are in the mind-body vehicle that happen from birth to death. But the thing that I like to pull into is that mundaneness is essentially a reflection to our level of regard for our own unique expression within the whole, or the cosmos, if you will. Cosmos being the whole. So there's cosmic energy of everything happening in the world. It's energy of people around us, of generators off buildings, of the wind, of mountains, water, trees, plants, photosynthesis from the sun. Everything is energetically bound together. So it's interconnected and woven within each other. We become an organism of that framework, that vehicle, and our energy is woven into the fabric of the planet. And then within that, we become our own individual idea with everything's ideas. And that, I'll let that sit for a second, because I think that can come off maybe complex, but I don't mean for it to be. Just consider you yourself as a singular idea, while simultaneously everybody and everything in the world is one collective idea. So we're sort of these like atoms of the global consciousness, and everything that happens inside of the globe of everybody as a whole happens inside of us individually. So the neurons firing in my brain, or the subconscious conscious that's happening in my brain, is happening in your brain, happening in the other person's brain, and so on and so forth. And if you just put that all together, it's happening in all of our brains at once. And that's why mundane and conformity and repeating of patterns and the same thing over and over and over again, seeing the same things over and over and over again, repeating history over and over and over again, is because we are the thing. We are all one thing, playing hide and seek in our time from birth to death. But if you can't get outside of conformity, if you can't become self-reliant on your own expression, then you don't have access to the intuitiveness, the essence of your soul while you're playing out and riding with your vehicle on your journey. And I think that that's the birthright of being a human. I think that's sort of the meaning. I can't claim that to be true. I can only think of that through my way of writing, and what writing has taught me is that writing comes from a source. And if you guys, whenever you're in flow state, you will know what I'm talking about. Writing comes from a source in which we essentially become the channel or the medium for where that source energy gets materialized into the world. So when I'm going for a walk and something hits me and I have to get it out, well, the more I get it into these journals, the more I get that idea off of me. That is moving energy from within me to the external world, and I'm sharing that. Whether it's commercially driven or it's individually, artistically placed into my journals that nobody will see is not the point. The point is that the more that I can expand my container to allow the source to work through me, I become a bigger medium for the whole. And that's why we make art. That's why we have to make art. Because when we're doing that, we feel a deeper connection to the human experience. And we feel meaning in our own individual imprint in that experience. And I think that that level of individuality creates confidence. It creates courage. And most importantly, it creates meaning. I think that's the point. How do we establish meaning in a meaningless existence, knowing that the one fact of this thing is it ends? And I think that the meaning comes from the authentic drive of finding your own voice and producing that in the world and adding that within the collective. I'm going to talk more on these subjects as time goes on, but I've reached my time limit. So go out there, find how you channel energy, find how you use your energy, connect with the child that is in you that was once so imaginative and creative. Think deeply and meditate on what that was. What was your thing? What was your niche? Mine was writing and telling stories. It was writing books and being an author. And it's my duty to ride that out as an adult, as I continue to find my own voice through my work. So I hope you're making art. I hope that kind of helped you figure out how to channel it a little bit, and I hope it helps you learn how to produce it. Best of luck. Cheers.